Imagine, a podcast series by Imagine Theatre.
Hello again and welcome to episode 54 of this podcast series, and as we're halfway through the year with casting and auditions already underway, it's time to take a look at the importance of the Junior Ensemble.
For more information, go to their website at www.imaginetheatre.co.uk.
I hope you enjoyed the last episode where we took a closer look at the pantomime title Jack and the Beanstalk. Remember that and all of the other previous episodes are still available. Just go to where you normally get your podcasts from. You can download the episodes there, and while you're at it, subscribe to the series and you won't miss any future episodes. So June is another important time of the year in the production process, with junior ensemble auditions starting to take place. We've spoken many times about how panto and theatre in general works best when it reflects its audience, and one of the best examples of that is the Junior Ensemble, or Babes as they've been known over the decades. It's a powerful way of inspiring children and young people to engage with the arts and perhaps even become performers themselves, but it also clearly signposts that this show is for them. So over the next half an hour, we'll hear about the process from auditions to casting, contracts to the performance run, and of course the final show Tears. We'll meet somebody with an inspirational success story which took her from the Junior Ensemble to the West End, Broadway and beyond. But first, let's hear all about the experience of being in pantomimes from a former Junior Ensemble member. Holly Bowden features on a new helpful video from Imagine to explain what the pantomime experience has been like for her over the past 6 Christmases at the Belgrade Theatre in Coventry. And Holly, first of all, I want to take you back to that very first panto that you did, you know, the first auditions and rehearsals. Can you remember how you felt at that time?
Oh, crikey, it was crazy. It was the first ever big thing I'd done, so I wasn't really sure how I was feeling. I was very nervous that I wouldn't know anyone, because at the time I'd never met anyone at the auditions. I remembered people vaguely. So I remember being nervous at the auditions, but as soon as we came in, there were people there to register us. They gave us stickers and they just comforted us, and it was lovely. We sat in the auditorium for a bit where I got to meet some people, which was great. And then they called us up on the stage, either in height or age groups, and sectioned us off into groups. And then in these groups, we went up to an area where they taught us like a really nice, simple dance. And then we came back and sat in the auditorium, and they would do a list of recalls. And you'll normally perform the same dance again, and then it's the same process until they finalise the group of kids that they want. And then we waited until rehearsal started, which normally start around November time. But we did like a 2 or 3 week long rehearsal and tech period where we put the show together. And then we did performance from like start of December to the start of January. So a month-long run. And it was the most incredible experience I've ever done. I just remember it feeling so surreal.
I think it's fair to say, when you turn up for the audition, you're going to be nervous. When you turn up to the first day of rehearsals, you're going to be nervous. But once you get going, everybody's so friendly and helpful that it's just excitement, isn't it?
Yeah, it's honestly, the first day of rehearsals, you think, the way you envision it is absolutely terrifying. And you step in that room and there's this energy that just comes with it, and it's absolutely incredible. And everyone's supporting each other and cheering each other on, and learning the dances is just so exciting. It's honestly so good, and the energy and just the friendliness of everyone, including the adult cast, because as children we don't get to speak to them much, but when we see them in rehearsals or we work on scenes or dances with them, it's absolutely amazing. They're just so lovely.
Now, one of the things that will ease those nerves is coming along prepared, particularly for the first day of rehearsals. So what sort of things, for instance, for a child who's never done panto before, what should they bring?
Obviously you'll need a bottle of water, preferably a big one, so that when you're dancing and that you've always got something to stay hydrated. I would say a couple of good snacks, like fruit, something that's not going to give you a sugar rush, will keep you going throughout the evening. And then I would also say a pair of dancing shoes, so like jazz shoes in particular are very, very good for panto rehearsals. And then sometimes a folder, just a small, easy folder that you can put any lyrics in that you might be given for the songs. Things like that will be absolutely fab.
And if you're in any doubt as to what you are supposed to be doing, where you're supposed to be, what you're supposed to bring, if you have any questions, the first port of call has to be the chaperone, really, doesn't it?
Definitely. The chaperones are always going to be there, and they tend to have a lot of stuff if you forget anything as well, so they're just lovely people and they'll always help you.
Once you move into Tech Week, obviously things step up a gear. It may be the first time that you spend any time with the adult cast, and there are things you need to bear in mind there.
The adult cast are doing a lot more than the children are. They're on stage a lot. And so I think at Tech, we all realised that we weren't going to be able to talk to them as much as we wanted to. They were on stage a lot and we had to follow their example.
And the other thing, of course, is that's going to be quite an intensive period, and you're going to miss quite a bit of school, aren't you?
Yes, which I thought was great at the time. But I'm glad that I had my school and my parents to remind me that I had to stay on top of my work at Tech whilst I wasn't doing anything.
And more importantly, obviously, it's important to keep your education going, because that's really important. But if you want to come back and do panto another year, the teachers are going to be more supportive if you haven't fallen behind in your education.
I've had numerous conversations with my head teacher every year where he would be like, you can only do it if you promise to keep up with your schoolwork, and I've had to stick to it and it's allowed me to do it. So
throughout this whole thing, at the auditions, during the rehearsals, during the Tech, and also when you get into shows, there are lots of things that you need to bear in mind in terms of things like behaviour and discipline, aren't there?
Backstage in particular, it's so intense, and you'll have people running around waiting to get on stage, and there's always massive pieces of sets moving, which might sound really exciting but terrifying when you're about to get run over. We always had to be on our best behaviour, and we were always constantly with a chaperone and just making sure that we were on our best behaviour, because then as well, if we want to do it in other years, we have to set a good example for ourselves.
Everything falls into place as well, doesn't it? If you are behaving well and you're disciplined, you're concentrating, you don't mess up, and then you can have fun.
Exactly, yeah, because in the long term, it's all about how much fun you can have as well. It's such a surreal experience that you want to take the most out of it, and so being on your best behaviour is one way to really allow yourself to do that.
You have reached the age whereby you can no longer be in the Junior Ensemble. How do you feel?
I'm devastated. I used to look forward to it every Christmas, so I get to meet new people, I get to perform and do what I love, and I think one thing that I'll miss most is the friendliness, the experience, and meeting all of these people, because it's something that money can't buy what you can do at pantomime. It's absolutely incredible, the experience, the energy, and I will miss it very much.
And obviously your eyes have always been open to theatre, but pantomime has really given you that sort of buzz that makes you want to pursue it. You're at Tring at the moment, you're looking at going on to drama school afterwards. This is something you really want to pursue, isn't it?
Oh God, 100%. And yeah, panto is where it all started for me. It was the first ever show I did, and it kind of, being in Tech as well and being backstage allowed you to understand more about theatre as well as just performing, and I think that's what really gave me headway into understanding what I want to do.
Holly, thank you so much for that. Now, if you are considering auditioning for a junior ensemble, or you know somebody who is, then keep listening, because we'll have more tips from Holly later on, along with her former junior ensemble colleague Alexia Moussakitis. Well, here at Imagine headquarters, one person is in charge of all of the admin for all of the children in all of the Imagine pantos. Beth Pearson looks after the admin and all the licensing for all of the Imagine pantos. And Beth, it's already starting to get busy, isn't it? Because the auditions have begun.
Yes, I am the lucky one who is in charge of all of the paperwork that is involved with Junior Ensemble and the auditions.
So let's just start at the very beginning, really, because you're still doing stuff and getting prepared even before the auditions, aren't you? So how does your year look?
The preparation for auditions actually starts the year before. So we start booking all the auditions in November, December, and we are still finalising them all the way through to February. So we work around school holidays because we want as many of the children to be able to attend as possible.
And what do you need to have in place before the auditions happen?
There's quite a lot of paperwork before. We create a schedule for the children. Before the auditions, I send those off to all the educational authorities for their approval. So it just makes that easier later on down the line. We have congratulations certificates for all the lucky children that will get to be a part of the pantomime this year.
There may be children in a show in one city who live outside that authority area. So every authority has to be approached, don't they, in terms of the licence?
Per panto, we could be dealing with 5 or 6 different educational authorities and liaising with them all to make sure that all our procedures are in place and we follow the guidelines set out by them to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to make sure the children are in safe hands and they enjoy it as well.
Is it fair to say as well that different authorities might have different systems, different regulations perhaps? I mean, the core values are always going to be there, but they may deal with things in a slightly different way.
Generally, across the board, they are quite similar now, which is fantastic. We obviously have pantos in Scotland and in Wales as well. So that does tend to differ with what the requirements are for each venue and what paperwork they would like. Some want more medical questionnaires. Others are happy with the parents completing that side. So yeah, it differs from venue to venue.
Okay, now once we're at the audition stage, is there any paperwork that has to be done for each of the auditionees before they've auditioned, or is that all done once that process is finished and the various groups have been decided?
So before the audition, we create an information sheet for all the children as well as an audition form. They print this out and bring it on the day. After that, once they're successful in getting a place in one of the main teams or the reserve teams, I then have the lovely job of sending out all the information for the licenses. There's a lot of information there, but all of that follows after the audition. And
that is pages and pages for every child. And we talked about this a moment ago. Just give us an idea of the numbers, because there's more than one group, for instance, at each venue. Just give me an idea of the numbers of children that you have to send this information to.
So for each venue, there will either be 2 or 3 main teams of children and 1 reserve team. Each team has 8 children. And obviously we have 17 pantomimes with young performers in. So that is working out to be about 400.
Do you find yourself doing this in your sleep?
Eat, sleep, dream it.
Once the auditions are done and you've sent out all the paperwork to all of the successful auditionees, are you just waiting for that to come back to you then, so you can then continue with the licence process?
Yeah, we have quite a quick turnaround. So there's a time period in which the licence has to be sent. And obviously Christmas is a really busy time of year. So the education authorities prefer it to be in as early as possible. Now we have some auditions at the end of September. So that realistically gives me 4 weeks to send the paperwork out to parents, get it returned, check it all over and collate it all ready to send off to the councils.
So that's really important. If there are any parents listening, don't sit on those forms for weeks on end, because that will slow the whole process down. And then once all that is done, once that's all come back and you've gone through the whole process, what needs to be done after that? Is that your job done for the year?
Once I've got all the approved licenses back, I can relax. But we are straight back into prepping for the next year. It doesn't stop. It's busy all year round. And as I said, we were already booking certain venues in November. So as I'm still waiting on licenses to be returned, we are already getting in touch with those venues about the following year.
What about things that happen that are out of your control? kids might be auditioned in June, they might be chosen to be in the show, and then September, October, something might happen. They may have other commitments, or for whatever reason, they cannot do the show. Mm-hmm. How do you cope with that?
On the audition day, we have so many young people come and audition, and that's fantastic. But obviously not everyone can get picked, so we have a great team of reserves. If for whatever reason a child in one of the main teams does happen to drop out or decide they can't continue for whatever reason, also another part of the job that is great, I get to make that phone call and say, guess what?
So presumably you go to the reserves first of all, but then would you bring in some other children to cover the reserves?
Once we've got our reserve team, we keep it at that, and we just pick them based on costume sizes for what our incredible wardrobe team are all making up.
So what's your background then? How did you come to this job?
I went to a dance school since I was 3, and I've always loved performing. It's always pulled me back. I did different degrees and never fully followed that through. I've got a undergraduate degree in psychology and a master's in forensic psychology, so that's completely different to this. But I think when you've got a passion for something, you always find a way back.
The reason I ask is because I wondered whether or not you were ever in a junior ensemble yourself.
The school I went to, we did lots of shows, so we stuck with that. But we weren't part of the panto team.
It's rewarding to go and see a show and know that the kids up there are all there because of you.
Definitely, and just seeing their faces and them being able to be on stage doing what they love makes all the stress worth it.
Before we end this episode with those final tips from Holly and Alexia, let's hear an inspirational success story to show just where a role in a pantomime junior ensemble could lead to. Sarah O'Gleby is having a fabulous career, which began in the junior ensemble at the De Montfort Hall in Leicester and has taken her to the West End, to Broadway and beyond as a performer and a choreographer. She's choreographed at the Oscars, the Tonys, and on television shows with the likes of Jimmy Fallon and Kelly Clarkson, and it all started with panto. So let's have a chat with Sarah from her home in New York. Sarah, how are you, first of all?
Oh, it's so lovely to talk to you, Martin. That sounds so crazy, all that stuff. But yes, from Leicester to New York. I love it.
So just let's start at the beginning then for you, because you went to a stage school, a dance school in Leicester. And do you remember the first panto you did?
I actually think it was Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And it was with Frankie and Bobby from Neighbours. It was when Neighbours was like huge. And it was just so exciting. And I think I was 10 or 11.
Tell me about the experience for you then, because obviously you've been to dance school and you were involved in competitions and all sorts of other things, but what was it like to go out in front of a big audience like that for the first time?
I can remember auditioning for it, and I remember wanting it so badly, and we had to, when we were auditioning, be in your height. So I'm quite small, but I think I was actually one of the tallest ones at that moment, and De Montfort Hall was I'm from a little village and half an hour away, and De Montfort Hall felt like Madison Square Garden, or something. It felt like Wembley Stadium. And when you go out there, when you're doing your thing, and I've got the biggest smile on my face as I'm talking right now. It was a big deal, and it felt big and it felt epic, and you felt the responsibility of wanting to be a part of this community that create the show, for everybody in the audience. You
made so many really close friends that you still keep in touch with today.
Yes. I mean, I think when you're part of a dancing school, like I was at Anne Oliver's, you go there, your mum picks you up from school and then you just go straight to dancing. And really, if anything, I remember my dancing days probably more than my school days, to be honest, and one of my friends, Becky Taylor, we crossed over from school to dancing. But yeah, I mean, dancing was just everything. And still now, that's what kind of keeps you humble, and you meet so many people all the time, but those people that have touched your heart and you've shared crazy memories with, they stay with you forever.
So when the first panto came to an end, did you have post-show blues? Were you desperate to get back for the following year?
Oh, yes, we would cry and cry and cry. I think I felt like that after all pantos. You've made friends for life, and I know you're with all these adults and you're just having, it just feels like you're having like the most special experience ever, and that you're lucky enough to be one of the people to be a part of it. Yes, I would sob and sob and sob.
Now, I've got in front of me the programme for Aladdin, and
With Sean Maguire, is that?
yeah, Sean Maguire,
Yeah.
who obviously was in Grange Hill and then EastEnders, and Alfred Marks, and I know you've kept in touch with Lindsay Britton, who was the princess in that.
Yes.
And that's the first year, I think, that you were classed as a senior, and that was another great show, wasn't it?
Oh, yes, that was a great show. And we had the best time with Sean. And I think Anthony Van Last was the choreographer, who was somebody that I loved. And I think also that year would have been the first year I did the show every day, you know, because obviously when you're a babe, you only get to do it like every other day or every 2 days or something. So that was the first time I did the show every day. And it was, I have so many photographs on that show particularly, and we all just had the most wonderful time together.
So at what age did you decide you wanted to pursue this as a career? Because you went off to Lane then, didn't you?
Yeah, it's actually really, it's actually a cute little story actually, but at De Montfort Hall we would do this big gala day, what they called it, every June. And my husband, he picked me out of a crowd because he was assisting this choreographer called Brian Rogers, and he's older than me, just a bit, which probably would have been around that time of Aladdin actually, and said, you're really good and you should think about training professionally. I went home that night and I said, this guy, Chris Bailey, took me aside and I could make it, but I have to train professionally first. And so we wrote to the Arts Council and we got all the brochures for all the top colleges. Then I started auditioning. And at the time, my parents could only afford for me to go for 1 year, but I had the opportunity to audition for the council for Leicester City. And at that time, they gave away 10 full grants. And I was lucky enough to get one of those 10, and they paid for my tuition for the 3 years at Lanes. Yeah, it was amazing. And you had to do like a full project to show how committed you were, you know, that they were making an investment in somebody that was really serious. It was a big deal. You know, I grew up in a tiny village, but I knew I wanted it. And I really think Panto gave me the taste of something that felt like more, and I wanted more.
I mentioned the West End and then Broadway. I mean, you must have to pinch yourself. The list of shows that you've been involved with, either dancing, performing, or choreographing, is just incredible, isn't it?
I mean, it sounds so silly because there was only 2 things I actually only really wanted to do. I wanted to be a Take That dancer, and I wanted to be Rumple, Teaser and Cats, and I didn't do either of those things. I mean, I can't even believe I live in New York. And it's funny because I've actually lived in New York now longer than I lived in London. I always say, like, if it all just fell apart tomorrow, like, it would be okay because I've done so much more than I ever dreamt. Ever. I mean, I didn't even dream of this because I didn't even know it was possible. I do think what's wonderful about being a dancer, and again, coming back to Panto, learning the discipline of being on time, listening, wanting to be the best you can for everybody else. Theatre is about community and everyone is a part of it, and so everybody has to show up for each other. I think I learned that really early on, and that's really served me.
I don't know how many A-lister celebrities you have in your phone book, but I mean, even Daniel Radcliffe, for instance, How to Succeed in Business. You've done, countless shows. And then I mentioned Jimmy Fallon. You're on Jimmy Fallon's show more than Jimmy Fallon is, I think, aren't you?
Oh, I don't know about that, but we have a lovely time together. Like, I'm quite cheeky, so I think he likes that. So we have such a lovely time together. And I also think, to be honest, because Chris and I are both from Leicester, we keep each other honest all the time. If he loses his teas, he'll be like, I've got a 20. And I'll be like, honey, a 20, and so we keep each other very honest. And I always say that people at the top are some of the most gorgeous people you'll meet because they're really wonderful humans. And that's also a massive part of why they've got to the top, because their kindness and generosity, and they're fully aware that they're there because of everyone that is around them, So there's lots of very special people that we've got to meet and work with.
And I mentioned the Tonys and the Oscars as well. I mean, you really have to pinch yourself when you get to that level, don't you?
Last year especially was really special for me because I did the opening with Ariana DeBose, who won the Oscar for West Side Story, and we did this like epic opening number, and it really brought the house down, and it was really a very, very special moment for me. And it's interesting too, just from a choreography point of view, which also comes, I'm bringing it all back to Panto, but it's like that number was a huge dance number, but Shucked, this Broadway show I just choreographed that just opened last month, like it's very actor driven, you know, and so you're making like kind of human behavioral movement and comedy through musical timing. And again, like so much of that comes to Panto. So it really is the most wonderful training.
Yeah, I was going to mention Shucked because it's had rave reviews. The critics love it, the audiences love it. And I've seen bits of it because some of it is available on YouTube. And I think there might be quite a few elements of Panto in there with the comedy and the music and so on.
Oh, definitely, for sure. And we laugh too because Robert Horn, who's our writer, he... you know, you can never move on a joke. He was like, Sarah, so-and-so's moving. Everybody has to be still. And I'm like, I know, Robert, I'll fix it. You know, like it's, you know, you have to frame the joke. And there's many, 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 many jokes in our show. So again, it comes back to that.
Do you know, I think as well that there could be a film made about your life. I think it's an incredible story. We've talked about all the things that you've achieved. There may be a bit of rivalry in the house as well. And your husband, Chris, is about to go into rehearsals for Back to the Future, which he choreographed over here in this country originally. But your story is incredible, going to rival dance schools in Leicester, not knowing each other until he picked you out at that dance show that you mentioned. And then you're both in New York living the life. You have a son now and, you know, choreographing the most amazing shows. It's a great story, isn't it?
It is a lovely story. And it's actually funny because when me and Chris started dating, we'd met in London. But I said to him, I was like, does your mom know I'm an Anne Oliver girl? Because Anne Oliver's and Janet Dupont schools were like, you know, rivals. And we laughed so much about that. But you know, it's funny because we approach work. We worked together for a long time together, like every day, because we worked for an American choreographer together. And now we have our own careers. And it's actually really wonderful because we actually both approach work very differently. And we're both freelancers. And so, but even I'm like resident choreographer for SNL, and if I can't go for whatever reason, like he'll take it on board, you know, for me, or if I can't go to Fallon or something like that, and we really support each other.
You know, the other thing I was going to say is that Jonah is 4 years old now, your son, and the problem is in New York, he's never going to be able to be in a junior ensemble for Panto, is he?
Oh, I know, it's rubbish. They just go to like, he has been going to ballet. And he goes to lots of activities, as you can imagine, in New York, you know. So, but there are lots of lovely, like junior, like there's a thing called Tadar here, and he came actually to Shucked about 6 weeks ago, and he helped hand out notes, you know, to all the actors, and he's like running through the theatre, and he loved it.
He's cute. He looks like a real character. Is he going to be a performer?
I don't know. I mean, maybe because he definitely performs at home, but he's a little fool, and and you can see that he's cooking something up in his brain sometimes. I'm like, what are you thinking right now? You know, so he's definitely my child.
So to sum up, Sarah, I mean, anybody who has a child or any young people who are thinking about auditioning, it could be the best thing you ever do. It's certainly a great experience. You'd recommend it, would you?
Oh, absolutely. And I think the wonderful thing about theatre is that even if you don't end up like necessarily being on stage, there's so many jobs in the theatre that all support the product on stage. And I'm always a big fan of like learning this when you're younger, but the discipline of it all, like that will carry you through any job. I think it's the most wonderful training for life, let alone, the industry. So definitely.
And what are you up to next?
Well, the Tony nominations come out tomorrow, and so we're just getting ready to do our Tony campaign for Shocked. And then I'm actually directing a new musical back home in London, actually. So I'm coming home in June to do a big reading for that. And then I have a couple of other things in the pipeline. I'm doing a big show in Vegas at the end of the year, and so lots of lovely things,
It's always a pleasure to catch up with you. Next time you're over here in the UK, we must get together and say a proper hello. But Sarah, thank you so much for talking to us.
Oh, Martin, thank you so much for thinking of me. It means the world. And I hope to see you very soon.
And we'll end this episode with those tips for anybody considering a junior ensemble audition from Holly Bowden and Alexia Mousakidis.
Panto season is right around the corner, and most of you will be starting rehearsals very, very soon. This is going to be so exciting for all of you, but here's a few things you'll need to remember. First day of rehearsals will be so exciting. You'll get to meet the cast, all of your peers, and who you'll be spending the rest of the Christmas time with. So that will include the whole of the junior ensemble, and that will also include looking and meeting more people within your team and creating a good connection. And when I tell you that the people in your team are going to be your closest friends for the next couple of months, it will be amazing. True. You'll also get along very, very well with your opposites. So these are people that you will share costumes with, and if your opposite can't do a show, you might have to go in for them. You'll perform with their team but still do your role. So that moves on to what you need to pack for rehearsals. Within rehearsals, you'll be singing and dancing every day pretty much. So this means that you're required to wear suitable dance wear, which includes leggings, t-shirts, leotards, whatever you can dance in to the best of your abilities. Dancing shoes wise, we'd say jazz shoes are probably the best, and you'll need these for shows as well. These shoes just allow you to move the best, you can point your feet. And then another thing that is very important to pack is water and snacks. These rehearsals are demanding and you will need lots and lots of energy to keep you going, but alongside you'll be having so much fun. It will be brilliant, but in order to have fun, you need to know what you're doing, and that comes with packing things like pencils and paper. So this will just help you note down what you need to remember and learn. That can include choreography, acting notes, singing tips, things that will help you perform to the very best of your abilities. And when you're noting these things down, you might be sat out watching another team learn the choreography, and with this will come behaviour. So you have to listen to your choreographer, listen to your team, your chaperones, and as well as behaviour, you'll have a phone policy. So a lot of you won't be allowed rehearsals like with your phones on, just as safeguarding and to keep you focused. Vital that you pay attention, and like we mentioned with behaviour, there will be chaperones around that are there for you. So yes, they'll be making sure that you're paying attention and behaving well, but they're also there for you to go to if you have any worries or concerns, or you need to speak to them about timings or anything like that. So they're people that you must talk to. And when you meet the whole cast, it is also very important, as these cast members will be over 18, so you cannot follow them on social media or anything, as also another safeguarding rule. You'll know your boundaries, it will come with the rehearsal process, and your chaperones will guide you on anything else like that. After rehearsals, you'll move into Tech Week. Now, this is probably one of the best weeks. It is amazing. But it does come with things like missing school. And missing school might seem great to all of you, but you might fall behind at school and you don't want this to happen. So we'd say, knowing from experience, when you're missing weeks, make sure that you're going to school to catch up on work, or you're asking teachers for help if you don't know. Just because if you do audition again the year after and you're successful, you want the teachers to be like, oh, they handled it, and they'll let you do it again the year after. More often than not, you'll find us with work in the auditorium, because you will be sat around a lot during tech. It is long, it's fun, but you have to occupy yourself, and it is so important as well that you're focused on what is going on stage, because that is a safety hazard that is important, and if you pay attention, you will be absolutely fine. And tech weeks for the whole cast, so the first couple of rehearsals will be for the junior chorus, but when it comes to tech, it's for everyone, so you will be sitting out more. So remember, bring blankets, snacks. You'll get cozy, but then you'll have to go up on stage, so just remember all things like that. In tech, when you can go on your phones and stuff, I'm pretty sure in tech, to occupy yourself, but you can't take pictures of the scenery or the set, just because the audience needs to be the first people to see it when the show comes out. So after tech, you move on to shows, and shows are what all the hard work is for. So it's a part for you to show off what you can do and to really enjoy and just have fun. One really important thing about shows is obviously you have to be on time. You'll get a half an hour before call, so you will have to be at the theatre, and that means half an hour before.
If you think you're going to be late because you're stuck in traffic, you have to message either your friends or the chaperone. And this has happened before where people have been late, but as a team you chip in to make sure that their costumes are ready for them to run straight into. So it's a big thing, but try your best to be on time.
If you know a couple of days before or weeks before that you can't make a show, then you have to inform chaperones, anyone in charge, so that they can put your opposite in for the show, so that the team can be full and have 8 children or however many people is in your team.
Even if you start to feel slightly ill, it is vital that you stay away from the theatre, because the last thing we want is for it to get passed through the cast, because that means that the show has to be on hold.
Also, that can mean rehearsals too,
Yeah.
because if you give it to the cast, then the cast will get ill, then understudies have to go in. If understudies get in, then it's just not ideal for the theatre or the actors or anything. Along with illness will come hygiene. So you are sharing costumes with one other person, whoever your opposite is, and you need to keep your hygiene very, very clean.
Yes.
So during shows, you need to wear lots and lots of deodorant.
Bring perfume.
Yeah.
It's vital that, especially if you find yourself wearing hats, that you wash your hair pretty much after every show, because nobody wants to be in someone else's sweat. We don't want anything like headlights, which doesn't happen. Just keep your hygiene. Everything will smell a lot nicer.
We also, when we did it, we used to get a little box, and we used to put things like
box.
Yeah, like micellar water, cotton pads, deodorant, anything that you think will keep the hygiene up in the dressing room.
Another thing is costume care. So like we've said, you will be sharing costumes, and once you've worn them, hang them up. Keep them safe. If you see a damage, report it so it can be fixed, because the last thing you would want is to go on stage with a broken costume or a messy dressing room. So just really take care of your surroundings and respect everybody else.
And one of the last points is hair and makeup. So Panto is obviously a very, very big show. However, it does not need to be over the top. Makeup does not need to be bright eyeshadow or big lips, anything like that. In rehearsals, maybe wardrobe will probably come and tell you what hair and makeup you need. But most of the time it's quite natural, because it's like humans in a scene. Nothing needs to be over the top.
Hair tends to be either 1 or 2 French plaits or a ponytail, so really listen. And when you do your hair, make it neat, because you'll be on stage to lots of people who will be enjoying the show. You want to look your very best.
But most of all, the biggest point is to have fun and enjoy all of it.
These will make memories that you will treasure forever.
And that's it for now, but thank you once again for supporting this podcast series. And don't forget, if you want to find out more about the Junior Ensemble auditions at an Imagine Theatre venue near you, go to the website at imaginetheatre.co.uk, and that's also where you'll find the helpful video from Holly and Alexia. Next time, I'm going to be talking to the group commercial director for the Trafalgar Theatre Group, Chris McGuigan, so make sure you join me then for episode 55.
Thank you for listening to the latest edition of Just Imagine, the podcast series from Imagine Theatre. And you can find out more by going to www.imaginetheatre.co.uk.